welcome to The Art of Adventure. This is episode 274 with Jim Fortin. The Art of Adventure is the podcast where we look at unconventional lifestyles, peak performance, human potential, entrepreneurship, and cutting-edge science. I'm your host, lead explorer, and guide, Derek Loudermilk. Check out derekloudermilk.com for the show notes of this episode and links to all the things that we talk about. There, you can also find more information about working with me, upcoming book projects, workshops, and events. And I'd like to announce real quick that Superconductors, the book that I wrote last year, is now available as an audiobook, and you can get that from Audible. Today on the podcast, we have Jim Fortin, and I've had several friends that have been through his personal coaching transformation program, and they told me that it was like nothing else they had ever experienced. And so I was really curious to learn more about this guy, Jim, and I started listening to his podcast, which is the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. And I binge watched, all 30 episodes or something pretty much in the first week. So it's really good stuff. And one thing that he talks about in there that I was the most curious about, what I really wanted to have him on the show, was that he calls himself a shaman's apprentice because his brother-in-law is a shaman, and he's been working with his brother-in-law for the last couple of decades. So I was really curious to dig into that. Some of Jim's credentials are he's an NLP master practitioner, and he's helped 6, 7, and 8-figure coaches and sales organizations become better at selling. So he is well known in the business world for his sales works. But this episode will get more into the other stuff that you can't find as much out there about Jim. And these are things like we're gonna talk about quantum physics, how our intentions affect reality. We're going to learn a little bit more about what is a shaman, what is shamanism. We're going to learn why there are certain places on the planet that have specific types of energy. We're going to learn how physics has discovered there are 9 dimensions of reality and where humans fit into that. We'll also talk about how counting or measuring what you're doing, like when you're doing sports, reps in the gym or something, can lead you to give up early, and how that's because you're not living in the present moment. So there is just a ton of really interesting stuff in this episode. And some of it I was not prepared for. And so you'll even hear me like pausing to try to understand what's going on throughout the interview. So it can be dense at times if you haven't encountered this stuff before, all these metaphysical connections between science and metaphysics. So I hope you really enjoy it. It's super fascinating. And without further ado, here is Jim Fortin. Jim Fortin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And this is really exciting for me. I have binged on your podcast, Transform Your Life from the Inside Out. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine shared it with me and basically just listened to all the episodes. So it's super exciting to have you on the show. And I feel like you have on that show really important information. And I know there's a ton more to you behind all that. So I'd love to get into just your... One thing that I'm curious about is your progression, your development in terms of like the NLP and training with a shaman and all these things that you've learned over the years. Where does the drive for that come from?
Well, interesting question. And let me backtrack here is that I'm thinking about actually adding a third podcast weekly on Fridays. And the reason why, and by the way, I just go with whatever comes on these podcast interviews. So I don't have a lot of structure. I just kind of go where it needs to go. But, or let me add here, is that I'm thinking of doing a third podcast on Friday, and it's going to be called Jim Fortin Uncensored. The reason why is because I have to censor myself on the Wednesday podcast. Because you mentioned NLP, for example, I've taught Neuro-Linguistic Programming. If people don't know what that is, it's I call it a subjective psychology developed by Richard Bandler and John Grinder back in the 70s. Tony Robbins took it and changed the name to NAC, Neural Associative Conditioning, I believe, or something like that. People have kind of changed the name because it is in the public domain. Anybody can use it and they call it whatever they want. I've trained in NLP for a lot of years, but working with a shaman, which I'm tying all this together, working with a shaman is apples and oranges. It's complete non-ordinary reality. My brother-in-law is a shaman. He started apprenticing when he was 6 years old in Mexico. I won't mention the name because my sister asked me not to, but Life Story's been written. It's sold like 20 million copies around the world. It's iconic. The only reason my sister asked me not to, because the person that ghost wrote the book attributed the book to someone else who really had some entanglements with women and some scandals and stuff like that, which don't pertain to my brother-in-law. So I'm going to honor that. But a lot of people practice shamanism, but there are very few what I call real shamans out there. And my brother-in-law is a real shaman that I've worked with for 24 years. Now, the reason that I'd mentioned the Friday Uncensored is because when people listen to our podcast, people bring all their interpretations and all their beliefs and all their models of reality. So I can't be everything to everyone, but I try to walk the edge just enough to get people to think and to open up. My typical listener is a progressive listener. They're people that are beyond a lot of the cultural dogma. But I can't talk about things like maybe some stories we'll share on Wednesday, because then it would lose a lot of the people that I can actually help also. So I'm thinking of a Friday episode that's just completely unabridged. No idea why that story came out of me, but I know that I can read your energy. I know where you want to go in our time together. So maybe that's why I laid that frame for you.
So there's something there about, like, you have to be able to reach people where they are, and if you go
Correct.
like too far, then they sort of shut out what's useful.
Correct. And to answer your question, your first question is, where does it come from? It's just karmic. It's my dharma. It's what I do. I couldn't do anything other than what I do this lifetime. So then to come back here is, yeah, if I stay within a certain range, I can reach the masses and I can move them. But if I start talking about non-ordinary reality and leaving your body and all this kind of stuff, then I lose a large part of the marketplace that can benefit if I just actually don't mention that stuff. Which you want to talk about this stuff, I know.
Yeah, I'm at a point where I want to try to suspend disbelief about what's possible, in quantum physics, in reality. I feel like I'm thinking about the time of the Copernican revolution and Galileo and how they turned a lot of things on their head. And I don't know if that's going to happen currently, but I feel like there's a possibility that science is going to just uncover a lot of things that we hadn't considered before. I'm a former scientist, so I don't know. I'm just really trying to force myself to be more open-minded.
Well, let me share something with you. Okay.
Sure.
So you're a scientist, so obviously you know what the scientific model is, right?
Yes.
You got to test and you got to have verifiable proof and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that model in itself is broken, and let me tell you why. Because science is also demonstrated, as well as ancient wisdom, in the book called the Kybalion. Kybalion. It's an ancient manuscript, even though it's printed about 100 years ago. It's an ancient manuscript. It was believed to have been written by Hermes Trismegistus, who was the architect of the pyramids. The pyramids are not 4,000 years old. The Egyptians did not build the pyramids. Even geologists know the Sphinx is at least 11 to 12,000 years old. Okay, let me keep going here. In the Kybalion, the first cosmic law of the 7 cosmic laws is that everything is mental, meaning the universe is mind. Everything is mind. Now, let's go to quantum physics. Quantum physics, actually, there's an experiment called the double slit experiment. This is real physics, and physics, as we know, is the most precise science on the planet. What they discovered in the double slit experiment is that, I'm going to simplify this, but the outcome of the experiment is based upon the observations and the expectations of the observer watching the experiment, which means, which is what ancient wisdom has said, is that the physical world bends to our consciousness. The physical, how do I say this? The wave collapses into the particle, quantum physics. So here's the thing. If the current model is, I'm going to just make this simple, is a scientist, I don't believe it, I'm not going to believe it till I see it, well, then they're actually engaging quantum physics to not see it. So they've actually set themselves up for a blind spot in the scientific model. Does that make sense?
They're influencing it so that wow. So if you say, it's almost like if I believe it when I see it, but then you have to expect to believe it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the double slit experiment says, again, that we collapse wherever we hold our consciousness is we affect the physical outcome in the physical universe. You're with me on that so far, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if I'm a scientist and I say, you know what, I have to double blind this and that, and I'm going to test and test, but I'm not going to believe it until I see it. Well, you're already predicating and setting up the research to not be able to see it because that's where your consciousness is. Now,
Is there a way around that?
For those of you listening, we're doing videos so I can watch him process, and when he's quiet, he's nodding his head, just so you guys know.
So is there a way to address that?
Well, what I've learned in shamanism is, and this is going to be a conundrum, but I've learned is that we don't know anything, and we actually don't. We think we do as human beings, and especially come election time, everyone thinks they know everything. And when you look at the average human, including me, is I know one language, and how many languages are there on the planet? That's a simple example. I don't play any musical instruments. I mean, so what do I know about music? Then we look at the implicate and the explicate universe. We know that we can only perceive 1% of what exists on the electromagnetic spectrum with our physical senses, meaning 99% of the universe we can't even experience. So then how much do I presuppose to know when I can't even experience? Well, I'm going to say that, I'm going to mean this humbly. When you work with non-ordinary reality, you can see more than people who don't work with non-ordinary reality. But for the most part, 99% of us can't see 99% of what exists in the universe. So then how much do we know? So then we go back to working from possibility and openness. We, and especially scientific people, and I'm not knocking science at all, it has its place, but people actually, my brother-in-law once said to me, he said, and it's actually in one of my podcasts recently, or a video that I just shot. Let me get the right phrasing here, because I want to say exactly what he said. And it's not coming to me. But the gist of it was this. Anything that you think is extraordinary in life, you only think it's extraordinary because it goes against your personal structure that you have learned. So scientists, which most are very left brain predominant thinkers, come with very rigid thinking. And because thought manifests like a double slit experiment or ancient wisdom, they trap themselves in that thought, not even recognizing they're trapping themselves in that thought.
I know you talk a lot about the stories that we tell ourselves, and that if you look around, your reality is sort of the reflection of all these sort of unconscious stories and beliefs. What I'm actually wondering about right now is I'm a parent. I have a couple of young kids, and I can't help but think of what type of stories or realities I'm passing to them. And if you, I don't know if, are you a parent?
No, but let me go here with this even deeper if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay. So my brother-in-law, and so because you're interested in shamanism, and he is a shaman, even though I'm a shaman's apprentice, I want to give credit where credit's due. I mean, I've taken what I've analytically at least learned from him, or non-ordinary reality, and made it my own. But when he shared stories with me, I want to say he's the one who shared the story with me. I just bought a home in Sedona, Arizona, a second home. By the way, you ever been there?
I haven't, but my parents went recently, and a lot of friends make pilgrimages there.
You would love it. Okay, so Sedona, sometime on your calendar, you would love it. It's very, very high vortex energetically. But about 3 years ago, we were sitting on the back deck of a home we were renting, and we were talking. And so let me just on a bridge share what he was sharing with me. He goes, most of humanity does not live in the present. The majority of humanity does not live in the now. They live thousands of years ago, and they're trapped in that. Now, let me take that apart for you. Do you know why the space shuttle is the width that it is? The current U.S. space shuttle.
I'm going to guess it has something to do with like ovens or something in medieval times. I don't know.
Well, it has to do with, and I was told this by a friend of mine who actually is like a Guinness World Record holder for memory. So he's a pretty smart guy. He told me this story many years ago that the space shuttle is the width that it is so that it can be transported on trains and carts. But train tracks are the width that they are because that's the width of Roman chariots, and there's some correlation between that 2,000 years ago. So the space shuttle today and its evolution is being affected by something 2,000 years old. Now, we as a species live, I'm going to just put it this way, we live, when I say we, I mean the collective, live in a dogma that's thousands of years old that was fabricated by human beings that pretty much traps billions and billions of people on the planet. And the planet doesn't even recognize they're not living right now. They're not living right now in this moment, which is all that there is, because the right now creates the next moment. They're living in the past from something given to them thousands of years ago. So the whole planet's like trapped in a bubble.
And do you feel like you have been able to step outside that bubble at times?
Well, I want to be humble. I think that's really important. And I don't think this is about anybody's any further along than anyone. We're at different places in our evolution. And something that I know, a metaphor here, is that we're all on the train going home. Some people are at the back of the train. Some people are at the front of the train. Those at the front of the train get the view first. Those at the back don't even know there's a view coming. So I do want to say that there are different levels, and I'm certain about this, different levels of consciousness and awareness. Working with a shaman for so many years, it's been shucking away the culturalization. My brother-in-law also often says that when we're born to this planet and on this planet, we give up a great deal to come here, because all the abilities you have before you incarnate, we forget we even have those when we incarnate into a body. And then what we do is we're born into a world which it's almost, how do I say this? We live on a planet that's very backwards. That needs no defense when you look at what we do to the planet and how we destroy the planet and how we destroy each other and how we fight for real estate on this planet. I mean, the most ridiculous things that people do, like look at Putin right now starting an arms race again. For what? Territory. And for what? Dogma. And this is what human beings do. I would share that it's probably for those, and by the way, anyone listening on this podcast, they're here for a reason. They're already listening because their antenna is already up. They're already looking. They're already searching for something. The planet is waking up, but the majority of the planet is asleep. I remember many years ago, Barbara Walters asked the Dalai Lama if he was enlightened. Just watching back when we watched TV and it's ABC and it's an ABC Friday night special. And he said, no, he's not enlightened. And when people ask me questions like that, I'm just on the path like everyone else is. I'm just doing my dance, doing my thing. But there's a difference between seeing and looking. Most people look at the world with their eyes. I do that as well, but I can also see. And seeing is using your higher sense, which goes beyond the looking. And most people don't look, they see. I mean, I'm sorry, they don't see, they look with their eyes.
Could you say, I'm curious, what does that mean exactly? Maybe it's too much to get into, but.
Okay, no, we can make this really simple. Let me think of a metaphor, analogy, or a story here to make this really simple. And I want to actually walk a fine line here as well, is that, and I know that I can't substantiate this to your listeners, but anyone who's worked with me can tell you, and this is, everyone has a gift for the most part. It's a matter of what that gift is. Working with a shaman for many years, my gift is clairsentience. I can feel people. I can feel people, like, even if they're smiling, but they're an angry person, I can feel that. We call that the sixth sense in terms of what we call it in culture. Those are things I've developed over the year working with a shaman. So I can look at somebody and I can say, oh, that's a really sweet person, which is what people do when they look. But I can see beyond that because I can feel it. And I can say they look like a really sweet person, but inside they're really angry. Any of my students that I've worked with can tell you because I can sense. That's what those are the things that shamans start working on right away with apprentices, is learning to quiet the mind and learning to sense. Not feel, because that's biological and psychological, but learning to sense, and you can sense when you get quiet.
That's super cool that you can do that.
Well, everyone has things they can do.
I hope to find out exactly what special powers I have. That sounds really awesome.
Well, hang on there. Let me add also the most amazing power that everyone has. And again, all of you listening, I don't mean to be arrogant when I say that most people don't understand, but they don't, is sleep time. You're more alive in sleep time than you are waking time. So right now we're talking in waking time, but you know what? In sleep time, you're pure, unfettered consciousness. And shamans work in the sleep time and the dream time. And I remember seeing this post on Facebook. It was an entrepreneurial post. And someone said something like, you know what? Sleep is overrated. Sleep when you die. And my only thought is unfortunately that person doesn't recognize the power of sleep time and dream time, because that's when you actually connect with pure consciousness and you're unfettered by the analysis of the left brain or the structures you created or your belief systems. I mean, you merge with the universe in sleep time.
That's really exciting, because I also just a lucid dreaming author just agreed to come on the show, so I'm excited to dive in more. I've had a couple lucid dreams. I try to write down my dreams, but definitely I feel like there's more room to explore there.
Let me add there, we definitely can't go into it here, but many people think that, okay, well, I'm a dreamer and then I'm going to lucid dream. That's just the beginning. There are gates, what are called gates, we call them gates to dream time. And one of the first gates is when you start falling asleep and you slip between awake and into sleep. It's kind of like you walk through a real gate. But there are gates to dream time. Notice in lucid dreaming, you're making it about yourself, meaning me and my experience, and I'm lucid dreaming and I'm flying and I'm all this stuff. But there are gates and levels beyond dreaming, because we see lucid dreaming and the way that we think we have it structured and the way we perceive it is in the nine dimensions. But when we are really dreaming, we are even outside the 9 dimensions. And by the way, physicists now know that we have at least 9 dimensions. People think they're in the 3rd and 4th, and they're not. We're in the 5th and 6th as a species, because we're evolving energetically and electromagnetically as a species. I know I'm giving you a whole lot here. So
this is also good stuff for me to dive in with, maybe guests that could be experts on particular aspects of this conversation.
Let me just share, though, unless they're working with a shaman, how do I say this? Let me back up here. First off, shamans are shamanism is the oldest system of thought on the planet. Anthropologists can trace it back 70,000 years. But that's only in this epoch of human history, because we've been on the planet like 5 times now, and we get wiped out because we don't get it right as a species. So in this epoch of history, we've been here, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of years, but shamanism is traced back at least 70,000 years. Shamanism means, the translation is one who sees in the dark, meaning one who can see that's not there. In the Mayan times, the shamans were the advisors to the kings. In Native American times, the shamans were like the medicine men, the healers, the seers, the wise men. My brother-in-law started apprenticing when he was 6 years old with the shamans when he was in Mexico. He's from Mexico. But to give you an example here, when I first started apprenticing, it was my very first year, and we used to do ceremony on the spring equinox at power spots on the planet, power vortexes. And the first one we did was at Chichen Itza in 1996. Chichen Itza is one of the pyramids in Mexico.
Yes.
And we were there for 2 weeks, and I and somebody else that was there got really drunk on really bad tequila one night. And the next day we were going to go to Tulum. And it's not, I'm going to air quote here, it's not to sightsee or rock see. My brother-in-law knows how to actually connect with the energies and communicate with the beings. And we were in a 16-passenger van. It was a little warm. And I was in the 3rd row. He was in the 4th row behind me. And I could feel him energetically working on me, moving my energy. And I was so hungover. I said, this is what I thought. All I did was think it. I said, and I don't even know why I said this. So years later, I look back and I'm like, I'm really glad I at least said that in my mind. I said to myself, I am so hungover and I feel so bad. I'm going to leave my body until we get there. I thought that. That's all that I did. Literally. Didn't even open my mouth. He taps me on the shoulder behind me and goes, hey, get back in your body. There's time for that later. So at the level that he works at, and I have seen this, it's not cold reading. It's not charlatan. He's not a charlatan. It's not where he cold reads. I mean, he's demonstrated over the years, and he's even told me that when I'm in physical proximity of you, like when I work with him, when I need something, I just text him and say, hey, his name is Javier, and I call him Don Javier as sign of respect, like Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yes.
And I'll say, hey, Don, I need an answer on something. Can you satellite me the answer? And what he will do in dream time is help me find the answer. That's our metaphor, just satellite me the answer. But he's told me, he goes, when I'm in proximity of you, physical proximity, not only can I read your thoughts, I can read your unconscious thoughts. I can read all of your past, even though you don't know it's there. So I just tell you that for reference, because there are so many perceptions and ideas of what shamans are. But my brother-in-law, people come to him for either healing, or they come to him to learn to work with him in dream time at night, which he works remotely with people. So I'll leave it at that. They're either very physically ill or they're coming for spiritual growth.
This is super cool. Can you tell me more about these locations that you've been, the sacred sites, the power spots? Because when I find this when I go to certain places, right? They make you feel a certain way,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a European square or stepping over the rim of a canyon or a particular mountain. Maybe you could say if there's anything going on.
Yes.
What is going on there? Yeah.
Two aspects to that. One, we're going to call geomancy. Geomancy is I know I'm getting it right, but I want to explain it right. Geomancy is, have you ever noticed before, like on certain corners, like I live in Dallas and Sedona, and about a block from my house, I live in my Dallas home, there's a corner that no matter what they put there, it always goes under. They can put a bank there, they put a restaurant there. Just that corner is like a dead energy corner. Just always, any business goes under. And the same thing with the planet. There are energy vortexes on the planet. Okay. So many people will, like, for example, a lot of people like Austin, Texas. The vibe there is very hippie, very trendy, very progressive, very like Portland, very, very, very new agey, very granola, all that kind of stuff. Dallas has a different vibe. Cities, people will say, which is true years ago, is that people like Paris will build out the city because it's on a river for trade and all that kind of stuff. But cities also have energies and frequencies and vibrations. There are power spots on the planet that have energies and frequencies and vibrations. And actually, many places on the planet are connected. Like if you could imagine a geometric grid around the planet, these power spots are what connect these spots on the planet. We've been to many. For many years, we would go every year on the spring equinox and do 2 ceremonies. I did not go on this one trip. I was foolish and didn't go. But my family spent 2 nights unsupervised in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. The most powerful nights of my life is when we spent 2 nights unsupervised in Teotihuacan, which are the pyramids in Mexico. We've been to Uluru, which is the crown chakra on the planet, which is in Australia. Haleakala, Machu Picchu, twice, Island of the Sun, many, many of these places. So that's one thing, is that you may be feeling the energy of the place. Mm-hmm. Secondly, is there are all kind of beings there. When it comes to shamans, my brother-in-law is also a sorcerer, and he's a babalao. Babalao is like a priest in Santeria. And there's light and there's dark. That's very real, as a matter of fact. My brother-in-law works only in the light. He works only for healing, he's just always unconditional love and peace and evolution. His whole thing is, let's free ourselves from ourselves. Let's evolve the entire species and planet. But there's also dark shamans who actually work against the light. So you're going to like this story. I know you want a couple of stories, but when we were on the Island of the Sun in 2001 in Peru, I'm a pretty happy guy, pretty happy-go-lucky guy. And my roommate, who was also an apprentice, there's 2 of us to a room, he was also an MD, and he's actually, at that time, he was director of the mobile crisis unit at Bellevue in New York City, and he was an expert on psychosis. But we were like brothers, spiritual brothers, and I started hearing voices in my head to kill myself. Go back to New York, kill yourself. And I'm like, Todd's an expert. He's written papers. I'm like, Todd, I'm having voices. And he calls me Jimmy. He's like, Jimmy, you're not psychotic. I'm like, Todd, I'm hearing voices. And he's like, no, you're not. And I was hearing voices like, kill yourself, jump off the cliff, kill yourself, go back to New York. And it was like literally a being was standing on my shoulder with a megaphone yelling in my ear. So the next day, I'm sitting across from my brother-in-law at lunch, and I just start crying. And he looks at me and he goes, do you know what's happening to you? And I said, no. And he goes, well, we're bringing light. And there are many what are called diableros in shamanism, meaning a black shaman. He goes, they're feeding on the anger in you, and they're feeding on all your negative emotions. And what I learned was, and this may be way out there to some people listening to this, but it's very real. What I learned is that there are beings that can infiltrate your thinking, very, very powerful beings that can infiltrate your thinking. So this was my second trip with a shaman. That didn't happen the first trip, but that was my second trip with a shaman. And that was my introduction to power, the kind of power that actually exists cosmically on our planet. And by the way, I don't talk about any of this in my transformational programs and all that kind of stuff. I keep it very much, let's evolve you as a person and let's improve your life. But I know where you want to go with this, and I'm okay with that. So,
yeah, this is taking on its own trajectory, which is wonderful. Where is the Island of the Sun? I'm not familiar with that location.
Lake Titicaca. It's the birth home of Mancoca Pac, which was the first Incan ruler. Obviously, we know that the Incans inhabited Machu Picchu. Yeah, it's Island of the Sun. You have to get there only by boat. It's a very, very powerful place. Energy. It's completely agrarian. Like there's no electricity on the island. It's all just natives that live there.
What? Gosh, there's so many. Can you tell us about another one of your meaningful experiences at one of these locations?
Yes, I can. There's probably many that I should not tell, but what I want to share with people is that there's an entire reality that exists beyond your 3D eyes. Most of us live, and I have been there, no stones. And I don't think I'm some guru or I don't like, I say I'm a shaman's apprentice simply for definition. But to me, if somebody once said, "Are you becoming a shaman?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" It would be like 20 lifetimes before I got there. And I just made that up, but I'm like 1% of what my brother-in-law is, who's a real shaman. So, but what I can tell people and what I'd love for people to understand, and I'll bring it back to something very tangential and very concrete, is that there's a complete non-ordinary reality that exists. It's physics. And every thought you have manifests and creates. Every single piece of consciousness you hold creates something because we're creators, every single one of us. And every thought you have about, like, for example, your health, people don't get this, and it makes a lot of people angry because it goes against their personal structure. But for example, something that I have learned is that illness in adults is a choice. Cancer is not genetic. So, but all these things, these industries make billions and billions of dollars off from stuff like this. We live in a world that's very greed-driven. You look, for example, simple things like solar industry. People actually, do you think that the auto workers, do you think the oil companies want solar power to ever develop? It would, they'd lose trillions of dollars. It would shut down one industry for a new. Greed, which is all ego, drives the majority of human beings. We destroy the planet. Like even right now, we're destroying the planet for a coal industry, which is a dead industry. It's toxic for the environment. But what I want people to really get is, and this is Ernest Holmes said back in Science of Mind about 100 years ago. Are you familiar with Ernest Holmes?
No.
Yeah, you would like his work. It's called, he wrote a book called Science of Mind around 1910 or so. And one of the passages in the book is, imagine your mind so plastic, so receptive that it receives the slightest impression of your thought. Not some thoughts, but all thoughts are taken up and acted upon. I have learned that and confirmed that apprenticing with a shaman, that every thought you have about money, about health, about wellness, about relationships, every thought you have manifest.
I think that I've heard you say we don't get to choose our thoughts. They just pop in. So that seems like, okay, our thoughts manifest, but we don't get to choose. So
okay, we don't control our thoughts. Okay. So let me give you an example. We think that humans think the biggest illusion that people get into is control. In all my programs, my transformational programs, it's a heavy issue for a lot of people as they're trying to control themselves or other people or circumstances. We don't control anything. Yesterday, let me demonstrate here. Can I have 20 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay. So everyone listening right now, wherever you are, I want you to focus only on, let me think how I want to do this. Okay, it's not going to work audio, but I did something yesterday with a video. Is I had a video camera and I held it up and I said, I want you to focus on this picture for 30 seconds. And guess what? Within about 5 seconds, their mind's darting all over the place. We can't even control our own thoughts. But let me take what you said. We don't control our own thoughts, but we can choose our thoughts. Difference. Does that make sense?
You mean we can choose to look at a thing, but then we don't control whether our mind wanders or not. So
and
we
in the
can
reptilian
bring the
brain,
attention.
yes. In the reptilian brain, like in Buddhism, they say bring your attention right back again. Your mind wanders, bring it back. That's your mind. Now, if you want to go to an entirely different level, I've gotten a glimpse of it, and I am nowhere near mastery. I'm like on roller skates, and I can get up and I can roller skate or rollerblade, but I'm not a master at it. But it is completely silencing the mind. That's the first thing shamans start with, and that means no thought. Learning to silence the mind and be in quietness of the mind. I did not shoot. That's my old Freudian slip from video years. I did create a podcast episode on, and it's so interesting that you see to me, it's interesting. You see all these people running around talking about live your highest potential, live your full potential. And you see a lot of that in the personal development industry, right?
Yes.
People always externalize that. Living your fullest potential is making the biggest impact in the world and having the biggest company and your own private jet and perfect health. It's all nonsensical. They don't even understand what they're talking about. And I know somebody might criticize me for saying it that way, but that's the reality. Living your highest potential is you as a being learning to silence your mind. Because when you learn to silence your mind, you as a being are functioning at the highest ability of your being as a cosmic being on the planet.
My wife can do that. She can silence her mind, and we actually, there's a game at the Science Museum here in St. Louis where you put on these electrode hats, and the person who can silence their mind, it moves this puck into a goal, and right away she was just like totally silent, and mine was like way up here zagging along, and I was like, don't think. And I was like, no, you're thinking that. Oh.
yeah. And I want people to really get that is, Rumi said something along the lines, and I'm gonna mangle the quote, but to silence your mind is to hear everything. And that sounds like a conundrum, and it sounds like something that somebody might tattoo on their arm and put up as a poster. But when we really get even a taste, it's kind of like if you like sweets and you've never had chocolate before, and somebody gives you a taste of chocolate, and you're like, whoa, that's good stuff. When we learn to silence the mind and we get there, and that's pretty much my entire experience with my brother-in-law has worked with all of his apprentices. Quiet the mind. Because your mind also can obviously be the tool to create. But when we start working with sense, we're going beyond mind. We're going beyond feelings. We're going beyond emotions. These are things that it's beyond my pay grade to talk about because I've been exposed to it. But I would be leading people in the wrong direction, and I do not want to do that. But when I look at the most powerful gift that I have for myself is when I can just quiet the mind. And I tell my students in my transformational programs, I keep it simple, stop thinking. Because it's your thinking that, and I don't mean completely stop, but anytime you find yourself lost or anywhere, it's because you're thinking your way there. And people get into that, and they get into what I call the labyrinths of the mind. And many people will stay stuck there for years. And I even tell myself, if I'm looking at something and I'm up against a wall, the first thing I say is stop thinking. Get quiet, sit with it. So I did create that episode. It's episode number, I don't know which one it is, but it's like your highest potential. Your highest potential is not external things or all the things that motivational speakers are blabbing about. And by the way, I do use some of that polarization because you know what? For years I was a marketer, and marketing helps as well. All right. So, but all these things that people are talking about live your highest potential has nothing to do with anything external. The way that I've been trained is develop the potential as a being, meaning a being here on the planet. And when you do that, everything else opens up for you. And I have found that to be true.
Can we look at an example? So before this interview, I was thinking about,
Sure.
Personally, I'm a cyclist, and to get fit, there's this like slow progression of training, like through, many weeks and months. At least that's my understanding of it.
Yeah.
And, so when I think about, for example, earning money, I think about like a progression of skills and getting better at key skills. And then I'll be more valuable in the marketplace, and I'll sort of be able to charge higher and all these things. But I'm guessing you would say that that's not the right way to earn a lot of money, or that's not the right way to manifest what you want. So maybe you could just talk about that.
Let me go two places with that. Yeah. Number one is I was with my brother-in-law last October, and we were at a beach, and we were sitting on the back porch late at night. And I want to be careful what I want to say here. He was having me do some stuff, and I'll leave it at that. And he's like, "Okay, time again." And I'm like, "No, I'm done." And I said, "I'm on number 4." And he says, "Why are you counting?" And I recognized in that moment that I was predicating where I thought I was based upon a number. I don't know if that's sinking in yet. I haven't seen your head cocked back yet and going, I got it already. But we actually do things in life. That's just the way we do it, is by counting. To give you an example, let me give you 2 examples here. So the Navy SEALs have what's called, I think they call it the rule of 40%. That means when you think you're done, you're only at 40% of being done. You have the capacity to go a lot further than that. Mm-hmm. So in the gym, what we do is, when I used to work out a lot when I was younger, I was in my 50s now, I'd trainers and go to the gym. And like we had all talked about, which is self-talk. I hate leg day. And I remember one day doing leg day. I'm like, okay, 10 reps, I'm on 9, 10, I'm done. And my trainer's like, 1 more. And I'm like, no, I'm done. And my trainer says, your mind will give out before your body. Now, with the shaman talking about last year, when I'm like, I'm at 4, I'm done. And he said, why are you counting? It dawned on me that any time that I quit anything, it's because I'm counting. Does that make sense so far? Like for training, you're talking about training. Mm-hmm. I can't go another mile. I've done 20 or whatever it is. Once we stop counting, which is talking to ourselves, and we start getting quiet, we keep going. I'll come to money in just a minute. I had a student of mine many years ago in his 50s, had a heart attack. And 3 weeks after the heart attack, he ran 75 consecutive marathons with no training.
Crazy.
Process that. 75 days in a row.
Sounds exhausting.
Over 20, he ran from like Forrest Gump. He ran from Minneapolis to the Olympics in Atlanta. I mean, this man was not training. He was probably 40 pounds overweight. People said he couldn't do it. And he ran, and he told me, he's like, I didn't run just 25 miles. He goes, sometimes I ran 30 miles based upon like I had to run to the next city or something like that. We weren't at a city yet.
Yeah.
But he did that 75 days in a row. And I look back and I'm like, he did it because he stopped thinking. But what we do is we're like, oh my God, I ran 1 marathon yesterday. I can't run another one today. It's because we're counting. Now, about money, I created an episode on this, and I've learned this with the shaman, is that money is not work. In our world, we're taught. I grew up working class, poor in Texas, farm boy. And I was taught to work hard and get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I see people doing it this day and age. I saw somebody on Facebook yesterday posting about, you know what? You got to suck it up. You got to work hard. You got to hustle. You got to do all these things. That's not true. That is not true, because if that were true, everyone who hustled and worked hard would have money. Money does not come from hard work. Money comes from vibration. And vibration comes, let me lay this out for your audience, even though it's in a podcast episode. We have thought. Thought creates feeling. Feeling creates electromagnetics, vibration. Vibration creates frequency. Money is frequency. It is a vibration and a frequency is what it is. But then look at thought. Thought also being vibration and frequency. Where do most people hold their thought? Money's hard to come by. There's never enough. I got to struggle to make money. I've got to work. That is the frequency. And to demonstrate that, have you ever noticed that people who need the money the most have the least?
Sure.
Right? That's their vibration and frequency. Their vibration and frequency is, oh my God, I need. And we can't go too far here, but what I've learned is if you want from the universe, stop needing. When you need nothing is when everything comes. But when we say, I need money, I need money, I need money, what you're really saying to the universe is, I don't have money. Then that is your thought, your feeling, your frequency, and your vibration and your frequency. And that's what you bring right back to you is a lack of money. We're magnets. We're all electromagnetic beings.
So what's the connection then with skills like getting better at sales skill or those types of things?
You know what? That's the world. And I've taught persuasion and influence for a lot of years. I'm just a natural at it. And that's why I taught it for so many years, teaching people how to get into people's brains and all that kind of stuff. What I've learned is by watching people, you ever noticed, well, I don't know, have you ever worked like a corporate job or office job or any of that?
I used to.
Okay. But like I used to do a lot of work in real estate, and you see some people that, man, they're working away. They're in the office every morning, they're working away, yet they're making $37,000 a year. And you got Bob or Susan over there not working at all, so to speak, and they're making $500,000 a year. I think obviously because you'd even mentioned, so it's part of your reality is that you want to develop your skills, et cetera. It depends upon where you work and what you do. I mean, for example, if you're an accountant, obviously you have to have accounting skills. I mean, you can't just kind of turn on your numbers and say, well, I think they kind of match. I'm not sure, but we're off $4,000. I don't know where it is. Right?
Right.
So I don't know how to answer that question, but let's look at degrees because it's one of the cosmic laws also, the law of polarity, is you can have let's go here. Look at actors and actresses. I used to live in New York City, and there are a lot of people that are extremely talented. Why are some people extremely, extremely gifted and they don't make it, but somebody else who's less gifted as an actor or singer does? You ever noticed that before?
I don't think I could say why.
I say it's frequency and vibration, which is what I've learned over the years. It's whatever they're. Let me put it this way: is when people have a heart attack and they're unconscious, what do the paramedics do?
You mean shock them?
Yeah, exactly. Now, why in the world would you shock a bag of skin?
Other than the heart is electro.
Yeah, there you go. The heart is
okay.
Yeah, the heart is electromagnetic. We have an EEG and we have an EKG. We have a heartbeat. We have brain waves. We are bioelectromagnetic beings. This is what a lot of people have a hard time getting their mind around, which double slit experiment demonstrates, plus ancient wisdom, is, let me keep it really simple. Ernest Holmes, every thought you have is like a magnet. So whatever thought you have, it's like a homing pigeon. It goes out and it brings that right back to you. That's why the rich keep getting richer, the poor keep getting poorer. Just as a very general analogy, okay? It's not like perfect, but a very general analogy. But for everyone listening, your life is a direct reflection of your electromagnetics as a being, because it's all about electromagnetics. Because I said we go from thought to feeling to vibration to frequency. Every thought creates the feeling, which creates the vibration, which creates the frequency. So let's take the skills out of the equation. Is we don't get what we want in life. We get what we vibrate, because that's the frequency. That's why I said, have you ever noticed people who need the money the most have the least? This is a hard leap for a lot of us, by the way. I know we've got to stop here in a minute, but that's a hard leap. And I think I have to say it was probably one of the hardest leaps for me, is to, when I say something, and this is not woo-woo, it's not new age, so I'll say it in a few ways, is trust the universe, or trust physics, or trust the quantum field, or trust the quantum wave. But I just say trust the universe, because me and of myself, I mean, I'm just a little bitty being. But when I actually open up to the power that's available to me, and I evolve and I grow and I get silent, now I've got answers and I've got access, just like every single person listening.
I think that's a big relief in some ways if you can do it.
Everyone can do it. What people don't do is, my sister actually married to the shaman. We were joking. She's like, I'd like to give everyone an STD. And an STD is to stop thinking, trust, and don't doubt. Because we think. We don't trust. And then we doubt. And notice that's all electromagnetics. It's all thought, right? So then we don't even recognize we create our realities. But that's a hard one for a lot of people to take and to accept, because we love, as humans, I've been there. We love to blame other people. It's not my fault I'm here. Susan did that. Bob did that. My boss did this. My company did that. The economy did that. The president did that. Blah, blah, blah. We love to actually give other people and other things and other environments responsibility for our lives. And in truth, we are the sole creator of our life. And you find that in all the great works.
Jim, this is super, super juicy stuff. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
I know you've got to run. So where can people find you?
So a couple of places. One is just my website, jimfortin.com. Everything's there. All my podcast episodes are there, or on iTunes. The podcast is the Jim Fortin Podcast, Transform Your Life from the Inside Out. Either place would be fine.
Wonderful.
I do want to add, on my website, I think it's one of my best pieces of work. I give it away for free. It's called the Master Thought Formula. You can download it at jimfortin.com. It literally, and I can run over a minute or two here, but this whole thing is that we get trapped in our thinking because we think at the lowest level of thinking. What I mean by that is somebody loses their job. What people get into is, oh my gosh, I lost my job, no money, no rent, no car, can't pay my visa bill, can't pay my student loan, I've lost my job. Now they're creating all this frequency and vibration, and they're attracting more of that back to them. And the Master Thought Formula, what I teach people to do is separate themselves from their thinking. You are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. When you disassociate from your thoughts and recognize you're the thinker, you now have influence and power over your thoughts. But what we do is we get trapped just like a drain. Somebody pulls the plug and it just goes right down the drain with their thoughts, and people stay forever in a funk. And then because of thought and feeling and vibration and frequency, they continue to perpetuate that reality. It's a 90-minute video training. All you've got to do is opt in. It's free, and I walk you through literally how we call it the Master Thought Formula. And all my students are like, I'm going to MTF the heck out of my life. Master Thought Formula is that anytime you're in any negative place, you're sad, you're upset, you're angry, you don't have money, it's because you have thought your way there. Because you've thought your way there, we have to back you out of that, and that program teaches you how to do it. So that's over, cool. Yeah, that's over at jimfortin.com.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, by the way, is that a Mayan calendar behind you up on the wall?
It is. Yeah, we picked that up when we were in Mexico a couple of years ago. Yeah,
final thought here. Remember I talked about how humanity as a whole is living thousands of years in the past, even today?
Yes.
Do you know what the Mayan 13-moon calendar is?
I don't know, but is it this on my wall?
No, that's the Mayan. Actually, that's like a 250,000-year calendar back there, which we just finished, 2012. We're in the time of no time right now, according to the Mayans. The Mayans were master mathematicians and cosmologists and astronomers. The Mayan 13-moon calendar is the actual calendar we should be living on as a species, because it follows a cosmic cycle. It's basically 28-day cycles, and we run 28-day cycles, and there's one extra day. We currently live on the Gregorian calendar, which was I think instituted by Pope Gregory. There's no natural order to the current calendar, which keeps the entire consciousness off kilter a little bit, which means it affects our consciousness as a species, which means we're always off kilter, which means even as a species, by the time we live by, it's like having a pebble in your shoe. It's always a little annoying. It always hurts, but we're never in rhythm and we're never in sync because we're living as a cosmic being out of tune with cosmic order. Food for thought.
Yeah. Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Yes. Thank you. I hope to have you on again sometime, because that was really cool.
Yeah, let's talk again. Whenever you want, let me know. We'll do another episode. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. And Derek, thank you very much for the invite today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Absolutely.
Such good stuff from Jim Fortin. I recorded this episode a couple days ago, and then now I'm recording the intros and the outros, and I'm still thinking about this stuff. It's still turning over my mind, like what this means for my own perception of reality. So hopefully I will have him back on the show, because there's a lot of follow-up questions that I have. And if you didn't quite get it all, or if it's still sinking in, don't worry, we're on the same page. I'm learning right alongside you guys. So thank you so much for listening to the entire podcast. Thanks for listening to the whole episode. If you're the type of person that likes to help others, then please share this with your friends and family. If you found value, then they probably will too. So please share this out on your social media channels. And if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions or send me a message if you're curious about working together. My email is derek@derekloudermilk.com. And I do have one personal request. I believe we're all here to help others together, you and I. So let's help more people. And one way that you can do that is by leaving a review on iTunes, because what that does is it helps boost the show up in the ranking algorithms so that other people can find out about the show and get access to the information, and we can all help each other more that way. That's all for today's episode. Thank you so much. Now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous.